South Carolina Senator Tim Scott endorsed Donald Trump, but remember, most Trump supporters only count him as 3/5 of an endorsement. Oh, boy.
That's a slavery joke. But it was the Democrat Party that gave us 3/5 of a person so they could steal more seats in the House of Representatives. It's a Democrat trick. Last week, a Democrat member of Congress, the fire alarm puller, Jamal Bowman, he declared last week that I guess white people or something owe him $14 trillion. Not 14 billion, $14 trillion, 14 trillion. Reparations for slavery, which honestly, I think he should sue himself. He should sue the Democrat Party. Democrat Party should be on the hook for that. That's who did it. Republican Party, of course. Party of abolishing slavery and foundational platform, the creation of the Republican Party, Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president, of course, the Emancipation Proclamation, and then shot in the head by a Democrat and murdered, who was an actor. Kind of like Alec Baldwin shooting that lady on the set of little different, but there are similarities to be sure. Well, happy Monday to you and welcome back. Welcome back. I have many things to share. Democrats love burning things. We know that. Lefties, they love burning stuff. They riot and they loot. God, they loot, don't they? They just loot. They don't have to have any reason for looting anymore. They just go in and steal stuff. And they do it in groups. They do it as individuals. And you go to your CVS or your Walgreens and the cupboard is bare. Old Mother Hubbard. And it's because Democrats stole everything. There's a lot of that kind of. But they love burning stuff, too. They burn police cars. I've seen plenty of burning police cars in the last few years. In Washington, D.C., the Democrats, they've rioted and looted and plundered and burned. And they set St. John's Church on fire. And they set the only building in Lafayette Park on fire. Nobody went to jail for that. Nobody sentenced to anything for that because the left takes care of their own criminals and rioters. Problem is not our guns, it's your sons. But speaking of them burning stuff, a kind of hilarious story out of Canada, America's hat, America's largest national park, Canada. Canadian man who blamed government for wildfires has now pleaded guilty to starting 14 wildfires himself. Sorry, what? That's right, a left-wing radical who is an environmental extremist, a whack job who made videos of himself being an environmental nutcase, has now pleaded guilty to 14 charges of starting fires in Canada. The wildfires that smoked up Chicago and New York City and Washington, D.C. We were choking on smoke from Canadian wildfires. When will we do something about Canada? And it turns out this Canadian man who is a lefty, a lib, Canadian man who touted conspiracy theories claiming forest fires were deliberately set by the government has been convicted of starting 14 fires himself. Pyromaniac Brian Pare, P-A-R-E with an accent grave, 38 years old, pleaded guilty to 13 counts of arson and 1 count of arson with disregard for human life. That should, in theory, make it more severe. As his main motivation, he claimed he was doing tests to find out whether the forest was really dry or not. I guess he got his answer after the 12th or the 13th try, but the 14th one had to be lit on fire just to make sure. You want to be certain. Prosecutors said that one of the fires set by Pare caused the evacuation of at least 500 homes in Quebec, you see, in Chiapas, Quebec. And he's running around setting fires. We know a whole bunch of them in California were arson as well, and they never caught anybody because they probably figured out it's their son. It's the Democrats going around setting fires all over the place. So the Canadian forest fires that smoked up half the world for months on end. I was getting calls from my brothers in Chicago. They're choking on the phone. Can you see what's going on in Chicago? And of course, the media wasn't covering it because they're New York based. But when the smoke reached New York City, then it was big news for a little while until the smoke cleared out of New York. But if you're still choking in Minneapolis and Chicago, they didn't care because, they're New Yorkers. And that's how that goes. So this is kind of an amazing story. This Brian Pear guy pleaded guilty, convicted, 14 forest fires himself because he's an environmental whack job. And he liked to make videos of himself being an environmental whack job. Just amazing stuff. So one of the first blazes that Pear set, May 31st and June 1st, he set a whole bunch of fires. Prosecutors said the spree started just 3 days after the Quebec government banned open fires in or around the forest because of increasingly dry conditions. So he went around and he set these fires because he's an environmentalist. And they're giant, huge fires. I mean, again, they smoked up the United States. Washington, D.C. is not on the Canadian border. But the Enviro, they're Enviro-fascists and Enviro-lunatics. That's what they do. Now, speaking of our open border, our southern border is wide open, and the Democrats lie about it all the time because that's what they do. They lie and they lie and they lie. And there are people pouring across. We've had startling numbers in every area. Again, we're talking 8. The estimates are all over the place, but 8.5 million illegals into the country under Joe Biden so far. And we just crossed 3 years of Joe being president day before yesterday, right? Saturday was January 20th, and that is the 3-year anniversary of Joe Biden being sworn in as president of the United States. 8.5 million. So he's got another full year to do as much damage as he possibly can, and that is his goal. And we could have 12 million illegal aliens enter the United States under Joe Biden's 4-year watch because they rang the dinner bell and gave out gift baskets and free hats and bus tickets and plane tickets and Visa cards and phones, and then they turn around and they lie to all of us about it. But all the cartels know what's going on. They're making billions off of this. Joe Biden is the best friend of the Mexican cartels. And then, of course, the 100,000 fatal drug overdoses in the United States every year. Pay no attention to that, right? And we've had, and again, that number 12 million, if we reach 12 million in Joe Biden's first 4 years, that number is equal to the number 12 million immigrants, legal immigrants, came in through Ellis Island, while Ellis Island was for 62 or 64 years the gateway to the United States from the Atlantic Ocean. And 12 million legal immigrants came in, were tested for medical issues and checked out for criminal records and things. We vetted them at Ellis Island. We're not doing that at our southern border. And we could have a number equal to generations of Ellis Island being open could spill across our southern border illegally in 4 years of Joe Biden's administration. Joe Biden's presidency is his only term as president, because he's going to fake an illness and get out of the way so that I think Michelle Obama maybe can step in. So we got that going. Now back to the open border, because last year, 24,000 Chinese came in. Last year from our southern border. Last year, 169 people on the terror watch list were nabbed at our southern border. 169 people on the terror watch list. President Trump, 2019, 3 people on the terror watch list were nabbed at our southern border in 2019. And in 2020, President Trump's last year, first term, there were 3 people on the terror watch list. Last year, 2023, 169 people on the terror watch list. What could go wrong, honestly? Now, with that said, I want to share with you audio of an amazing moment on our southern border. The Post-Millennial has the story, and the Washington Post does not. Just extraordinary, an amazing moment. Illegal immigrant threatens citizen journalist reporting on border crisis in viral video. So an illegal alien who is from the Middle East, he's probably 6'2", lean, beard, glasses, 35 years old, and he's crossing the border illegally. An illegal immigrant allegedly threatened a citizen journalist on Saturday, day before yesterday, who was reporting on the illegal immigrant crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border, telling the videographer, "Soon you'll know who I am." It's like that. He's like a Satan-worshipping, blood-drenched ghoul. The incident occurred near along the border at, Sasabe, Arizona. I'm going to go with Sasabe, S-A-S-A-B-E, Sasabe, Arizona. A videographer with First Responders, it's First Responders Media is the name of the organization, First Responders Media, and he's making video, uploaded the video footage of the altercation to X, listen to this video, because First Responders Media on their X account posted the video, and the dude, the American, is just, some guy. He's 30 years old. He's got a black T-shirt on. He's got a lot of tattoos on his arms. And these illegals are sauntering into the United States because the Democrats want to destroy America and secure power forever and ever. And this dude who's got like a little bit of a ponytail, kind of a man bun ponytail, the good guy here, and he's unshaven and bearded, and he says, "Hey, illegal aliens, where are you guys from?" And it went like this.
By the way, if you are smart enough, you will know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're going to know who I am. Very easy.
Wow, very easy. The entitlement.
No, believe me, I'm much better than that.
The entitlement, guys. Wow.
We'll see soon.
If you were smart enough, you would know who I am. If you were smart enough, you would know who I am. But soon, you will all know who I am. You will find out who I am very soon, he says. Now, a helicopter gunship should be called in to chase this guy across the desert and chew him up with 20-millimeter rounds. Honestly, this is just a small slice of our open border, right? And this reporter, First Responder Media, First Responders, plural, media, just there watching people coming in because our government isn't stopping it. The Texas governor is trying to stop it. And in fact, he was asked about this moment. He was on yesterday, Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, who's trying to save the country, even though the Democrats are not. And Maria Bartiromo asked Governor Greg Abbott, showed this video yesterday and said, "Hey, we got this guy. He sure sounds like a radical Islamic terrorist, doesn't he? Like a jihadi." And he's, getting all tough guy with a, "You will know who I am soon enough." Boom, boom. Honestly, this is why you don't have open borders. Just one more reason that you don't have open borders. We had last week, Thursday, Friday, the MS-13 member that the mother of the 20-year-old young woman that was raped and murdered by the MS-13 member illegal alien who was a known gang member in El Salvador covered with MS-13 tattoos, waved into the country by Joe Biden. The Brazilian that was arrested in New Hampshire, who had escaped prison in Brazil after he was convicted of murdering 11 people in a massacre, and he was sentenced to 275 years in prison. He escaped. He came to the United States. He's casually working at somebody's house in New Hampshire. No big deal. Because of Joe Biden. So Maria Bartiromo asked Texas Governor Greg Abbott, showed him the video, and said, "Look at this. This is at our border, Governor. What up?"
I have asserted in court that there is an invasion going on in the United States of America, and that videotape typifies why there is such an invasion. That is a threat to the United States of America, what he said, but it's not a one-off threat. We see things like that happen every single day.
Every single day. You got people coming in from all over the world, from all corners of the world. And this guy, looks like a mugshot in blue jeans, and he's an illegal alien. And this reporter with First Responders Media, all he said was, "Hey, where are you from?" Where are you from? That's it. That's all he said. And what did the terrorists say in response to, well, that's Greg Abbott. Greg Abbott with Maria Bartiromo. He sums it up pretty well.
It's not what happened under Bush or under Trump or under Obama. This is something completely different that has never happened before in the history of the country. This is an invasion by people we don't know who they are, where they're coming from, or the danger they may pose. And so it's right for Texas to have taken the steps that we have taken to crack down on the illegal crossings, to declare it an invasion and use every tool we can to do the job that Biden is not doing, and that's to try to deny illegal entry into our country.
And what did the terrorist say again when he was walking into the United States? You're not smart enough to know who I am. Kalaka, Muhammad Jihad. You're not smart enough to know who I am. And then he says, you'll find out soon enough. That's why we don't have open borders. You find out who I am very soon, he says. And Biden is waving him in by the millions. The Democrats are not on our side. That is just a fact. They're not on Team America.
But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're gonna know who I am.
Hey, it's Chris Plant, excited to tell you about our July 2024 Listener Sea Cruise. We'll be sailing around the British Isles, visiting Scotland and Ireland. Please join us. Visit ChrisPlantCruise.com. Yeah, crazy Democrats, open borders, terrorists, arsonists, Canada. I don't think they're on our side. Let's go to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to Sid, calling from Los Angeles, California. El Cid, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Good morning, Chris.
Hey. Welcome.
I'm doing up here. I'm from that the head of the United States. Anyway, the reason I called you, I had a question about why no interest in the hostages. My point is maybe because they're Israeli and mainly Jewish, and maybe this is a form of anti-Semitism. Maybe if they were Muslim or whatever, there would be some concern. But who cares about the Jews and Israelis?
Well, it does seem to be the current wave with the Democrat Party, doesn't it? This virulent, genocidal, from the river to the sea anti-Semitism is all the rage in the Democrat Party these days, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a bunch of oppressors. That's all. That's and everything. No markets, Queensberry rules for them. It's basically anything goes with the oppressors. If you look at the philosophy of Hamas, and even Lenin said the same things, that anything's fair when fighting the oppressors.
All true, and that is what the left has done to Israel, with Israel. They've shaped it as that, the Israelis are the white people, and they're anti-white. We're all going to leave North America, by the way, and taking electricity with us. We're going to the Pacific. Have a good time. But it's true, Sid. You're on to them.
You are smart enough, you will know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're gonna know who I am.
But soon you're gonna know who I am. Michael and I were talking about this individual this morning. He doesn't seem like a refugee who's fleeing difficult times at home. He seems like a dangerous terrorist is what I don't want to stereotype. Oh, yeah, I think I do, actually. With this guy, from a satellite photo, you'd say the guy was a terrorist. And then he starts talking. Honestly. But that's not news. That's not CBS, CNN, ABC, Washington Post, New York Times. They're not covering that. No late night jokes about this guy, I'm guessing. But Democrats. This is Democrat-run America. I don't like the be afraid, be very afraid thing, but they're creating dangers that, as Michael said this morning, This is actually why you have a border. This guy is why you have a border. This guy is why there's a guest book and there are law enforcement people with firearms at the border. This is why you don't have an open border, a wide open border, because of guys like this guy. You'll know who I am soon enough, and I'll show you. You're too stupid to know who I am, but I'll show you who I am.
If you are smart enough, you will know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're going to know who I am.
How do you know how smart I am? We just met. Guess we should know who you are. As soon as we see you, we should know who you are. I guess we know enough about you now. And where's the FBI? What if we had an FBI that was... We should have a federal law enforcement agency. We could call it the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They could go after bad guys instead of Catholics and pro-life people. And just amazing. You're Democrats. All right, let's take one more phone call. And we've got a bunch of stories. We have political stories to get to as well, and President Trump and all that good stuff. Let's grab Glenn calling from Frederick, Maryland. Beautiful Frederick, Maryland. Glenn, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Good morning, Chris.
Hey, Glenn.
Yeah, last week, the senile old clown that we have in the White House signed another $5 million debt relief for student loans after the Supreme Court said it was unconstitutional for him to do it. Two questions. How is he getting away with it, and why isn't someone doing something about it?
Well, those are very good questions, and I think it was $5 billion
right.
that he pointed up, and now brings it to $136 billion that Joe Biden has given away in what they call student debt relief. I'm from Chicago. We call that buying votes. That's buying votes. And why would middle-class people in the Dakotas be paying off student loans for people that went to Harvard and went to the George Washington University, which cost $70,000 a year? It's because Joe Biden is a kleptocrat. He's a creepy criminal. He's buying the votes of young people. They saw the poll numbers are not what they'd like them to be, so they're going to spread around another $5 billion. Now, it'll pay off loans for 74,000 people. Really, $5 billion, 74,000 people paying off student loans, $136 billion paying off student loans. And by the way, Glenn, the Supreme Court said that it was illegal for him to do it, that Congress would have to approve the spending, $136 billion, including the $5 billion just the other day. But they ignore the Supreme Court because they don't believe, just like the Obama administration, they don't believe in branches of government. They don't believe in the balance of power. They don't believe that the Congress has to approve spending. They just go ahead and do it. And, it's not like we have an FBI. It'd have to go to the Supreme Court before there's any justice anywhere. But and Glenn, you asked, why isn't anybody doing anything about it? That's a great question. Why aren't the Republicans out there holding press conferences and bringing the entire Republican caucus out into the steps of the Capitol and demanding that this be canceled by law enforcement or the Justice Department? They must be stopped. But Republicans are too milquetoast and too disengaged, I guess, to fight the fights that they have been elected to fight here in Washington. And this is just one more. The border battle is one, and one of the battles that needs to be fought. And the student loan buy-off is also one that the Republicans should be pounding the table about and bringing to a screeching halt. And Glenn, why, you ask, why isn't somebody doing something about it? Only the Republicans would do anything about it. And maybe they feel that they've got too much to deal with or something. But no, you need to have hearings on this. You need to have, then the media ignores them because the most corrupt institution in the United States of America is the American news media. But the Republicans on Capitol Hill need to fight these fights, Glenn. And honestly, President Trump should be pounding the table about Joe Biden stealing $136 billion to buy votes of people that went to college and willingly took out student loans, took on debt, and then, and look, they didn't even go to the White House and say, hey, can you pay off my loans for me? The White House just said, we're going to pay off because, they're in bed with the universities and then academia, and those are Democrat Party factories, and the Biden administration wants everybody else to pay off the student debt. Why not pay off their cars? Why not pay off mortgages for people that have been working hard and paying mortgages for 20 years? Home ownership is more important than your student loan debt. And, the thing is, Glenn, if one Democrat started suggesting that might be next, because they're not free market capitalists. They don't believe in free and fair markets in the United States. I played audio, Glenn, last week of Michelle Obama doing an interview for a podcast in England that's about mental illness, appropriately. And she said, well, trickle-down economics isn't working. They're still talking 1980s economics. Trickle-down economics isn't working, so we're going to have to force, that's the word that she used, force trickle-down economics and make it mandatory. That means taking money away from the successful and redistributing. That's communism.
We have this trickle-down approach, right? Yeah. That's the basis of a capitalistic economy.
No, it's not.
But that's not happening.
Yes.
It's not trickling. Mm-hmm. The law would require, in whatever way,
the law.
If we're not trickling voluntarily, then we need to be forced to trickle. Mandatory trickling down.
Yeah. Forced to trickle, mandatory trickling down. She's talking about a kleptocracy. And, as they like to say, they agree with Chairman Mao that all power comes from the barrel of a gun. And that is Michelle Obama, Ivy League Michelle Obama. And she is waiting in the wings, I can assure you. Even though they're pretending, all the Democrats are pretending, oh, she doesn't want it. Their life is so good. She doesn't want to be president. And where is the story? I think it's Charlie Gasparino, isn't it? Who said that he's talking to Democrats all over the place, and the Democrats are telling him that Michelle Obama is waiting in the wings. And while maybe she doesn't want to be president, it's not going to be her choice. But they're saying, well, if Joe Biden falls ill, if Joe Biden should no longer be able to continue, Charlie Gasparino breaking news, and Charlie said, I spoke to several Dem Party insiders last night, and everyone said they still believe the chances of Michelle Obama getting into the race are very low, very low. Joe Biden would have to be facing a health issue, and it would have to agree, he would have to agree to drop out, right? Then she could get into the race. This is what Gasparino is saying in his X post, right? He's talking to several Dem Party insiders. And, gosh, Michelle isn't getting into the race now, and the likelihood very low. Joe Biden would have to be facing a health issue and would have to agree to drop out. Then she would have to want to run, not necessarily, which wouldn't be a cakewalk, Gasparino says. If you're a betting man today, the race is Biden and Donald Trump, right? And if Nikki Haley can get enough, blah, blah, blah. But listen, because Gasparino, and he's talking to these Democrats, Democrats are saying, well, Joe Biden would have to drop out. It'd have to be for medical reasons or something. And, of course, Michael Piercy and I know that Joe Biden already said that when the day comes, he'll fake a medical condition and drop out.
When we disagree, it'll be just like, so far, it's been just like when Barack and I did. If I reach something where there's a fundamental disagreement we have based on a moral principle, I'll develop some disease and say I have to resign.
Yeah, I'll just develop a disease and then I'll have to resign. So Charlie Gasparino should be aware of that soundbite. And Gasparino says it's all a guessing game, of course. And Michelle hasn't said emphatically no, but that's the word inside the party, Gasparino says, of the Democrat Party. And, Glenn, you're 100% right about the student debt, and the Republicans ought to be doing something about it. And the Republicans ought to be kicking Mayorkas out as Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, and they ought to be moving a lot faster with the investigation into the Biden family corruption, It's not all about Hunter Biden. It's all about Joe Biden, and it's always been all about Joe Biden. And the Democrats try to divert attention away. So you're being mean to Hunter Biden, and he is a drug addict, and we should treat him nicely because he's a drug addict, and the Russian hookers and the stripper and the baby mama and the crack and the Marion Barry and the everything else. And then they tell you you're being mean by bringing up it's not about Hunter Biden. It's all about Joe Biden. And the Republicans, Glenn, they need a lot of help, don't they?
Absolutely. I've just never seen a Supreme Court ruling made and a president just ignore it and get away with it.
Completely ignore it. Just completely ignore it and get away with it. I wonder what a Justice Department would do if we had one of those.
Exactly. Yep, you're right, Chris.
These are all good ideas. Have a Justice Department, an FBI, have government oversight, branches of government with equal powers. These are brilliant ideas, but when they are being choked to death in the cradle, as they all are now, the FBI, the intelligence community, was abused by the commies, led by John Penitentiary Face Brennan with that felonious 51 letter claiming that Hunter Biden's laptop had all the classic earmarks of Russian disinformation. No, it didn't. But your letter that you signed on to has all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. And I covered the intelligence community for 10 years in my previous life. And what they did, what our own intelligence people did, was an information operation that they ran against the American people, and they corrupted our presidential election because they don't like Trump, right? It's crazy out there. Glenn, we're fighting.
Thank you, Chris.
Tooth and nail. We're trying to hang on. We're trying to tell the truth and make people aware. And I think a lot of people's eyes are being opened, I hope. And I think.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. You're doing a great job, man.
Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, buddy. The craziness. And, I got to tell you the Democrats are so mad. They're so crazy. The Gateway Pundit has the story about Alex Soros, son of George Soros, tweets out picture of a bullet hole through glass and a hand holding American currency, a total of $47. And might that indicate President Trump? Number 47 and a bullet hole, because it's certainly through glass. It's certainly being interpreted that way. And is that Alex Soros threatening the President of the United States? Alex Soros also at Davos, where he is declaring that the only thing that can stop President Trump is to put him in prison.
In Davos, Donald Trump is already the president. That's a good thing because Davos, the Davos consensus is always wrong. I believe if the institutions hold when he loses this election, he'll also be the Republican candidate in 2028 and maybe even in 2032 as well. Because, what's the way out for him? He either winds up in prison or he winds up in power.
Either he winds up in prison or he winds up in power. And the left, because they're the left, they're not liberals, they're trying to put the former president in prison on trumped-up charges. And you got the creepy, in fact, the Washington Post today, front page, has a story on the case against President Trump in Georgia, which is being run by this radical leftist, Trump-hating lunatic Fannie T. Willis, and the front page above the fold, election case in Georgia, hurt by claims. It's hurt by claims. That makes the Washington Post perspective crystal clear. The prosecutor, Fannie Willis, and her boyfriend, who she's boinking and paying at the same time, they do a lot of that. Nathan Wade, it's like the Biden family, a lot of stuff like that going on. But Republicans have said, well, wait a minute. Fannie Willis hired her boyfriend, who was married at the time, and started paying him. She's paid him more than $650,000 the last 2 years to be a prosecutor, prosecuting Trump. She's dating him. He had no experience and has no experience prosecuting felonies, which he is now being tasked with doing. And it's crooked as the day is long. The whole thing stinks. And the Washington Post says election case in Georgia hurt by claims. They point out that she hasn't denied the so-called claims that she's paying her boyfriend, who also took a meeting with the White House, at least one meeting with the White House, and meeting at least one with the January 6th committee, because the Democrat Party is involved in a vast left-wing conspiracy. And the evidence is it's in the Washington Post. It's not like any of this is being contested. The boyfriend, who has no business prosecuting a case like this, but is being paid, his girlfriend, literally has to sign off on the checks for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the Washington Post is upset that the claims, again, none of which are being denied, may hurt the case because it's all about the lynching. It's not about the facts. That's not the business the Washington Post is in. Amy Gardner and Holly Bailey at the Washington Post typing up this press release that's on the front page of the Washington Post today. There are crooks everywhere in our government. And if we only had a legitimate fourth estate to hold their feet to the fire, we'd be having a very, very different discussion. I got politics coming up. President Trump and Ron DeSantis dropping out of the race yesterday. Big fun. And in Chicago, the mayor there is being institutionalized because he's having mental breakdown because he's a Democrat. And they're all unwell, aren't they? Let's go to the telephones. Let's go to Christian calling from Fayetteville, North Carolina. Christian, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for taking my call. I love your show.
Thank you.
I'm kind of latching on to what Glenn said earlier, and, I think it was Andrew Jackson. He got ruled against by the Supreme Court, and he basically said, yeah, they ruled against me. Let's see how they enforce it. And the Constitution gives us a means, the Congress, two very specific means, impeachment. I know that our milquetoast Republicans won't go that far, but that's absolutely what they should do. You defy the Supreme Court, you get impeached. I don't care if you don't get it done in the Senate, whatever, but you do your job. You do everything you can. And the second thing is, which I always hear about, but I never see it actually happening, but the Congress controls the purse strings.
Yep.
So cut funding until someone gives you some answers.
I'm with you 100%, Christian, and shut down the government. A government shutdown like every 3 weeks. It's all show business, but shut it down. Can't give away $136 billion to buy votes.